Lawyers. What was the least defendable case ever brought to you? Story 1. Worked in-house for a famous character company with a large fan base. A few crazies a year call in. A guy called in claiming that we stole characters that he created and demanded to be compensated. I calmly asked them to provide more details so I can determine whether this has any merit to it. He states he designed the characters himself and gave it to the well-known actual creator when he was a kid, and the creator pawned them off as his own. I asked him when he was born, and it's a good 20 years after these characters were actually created. I ask him to explain this, and he pivots and says he also created some other well-known famous characters and brands. Characters and brands that are not owned by my company. I kindly asked that if he wants to pursue anything, to send us something in writing and hang up. I figured if he wasn't going to do some really basic research on his own claim, he wasn't going to spend any time writing it up. Never heard from him again. This sounds like a guy I know that tried to claim that he created Toothless as a character 2 years before the first How to Train Your Dragon movie came out. He also tried to tell me that he was an alien. I'm talking he 100% believed that himself, and went on and on about how he was waiting for them to take him home. And our first story starts us all over the place. I think you need to stick to either one or the other. Either you created these famous characters, or you're an alien. I think you'll only get traction if you just stick to one of those things. It's like you're trying to chew off too much right now. Story 2. Not me, but my dad's lawyer. My dad's ex-wife decided that we weren't getting on with divorce proceedings fast enough and decided to make a move while my dad was at work and we were all at school. So she locked my little brother in my room, the only one they didn't touch, and called over 40 people to take whatever she thought was hers. So pretty much everything, including furniture, old music, and pictures from before she was even around. I show up to the house to pick up my little brother, and it's empty. I don't know what she thought was going to happen when she possessed many things that were obviously my dad's, like pictures of just me and him, or the computer that he bought through his job at Dell. My dad sued her 3 times and won every time. She just got caught laundering money from the summer camp she worked at, and my old Boy Scout troop that her son was now in. Frick her. Interestingly enough, my dad just remarried to a district attorney. That is a trade-up. I guess this new woman likes a challenge. Or she sees enough value in this guy to be able to take on the defense against this ex-wife. Who knows what this woman is going to try next? That is, if she isn't going to jail over the laundering. Story 3. A lady didn't pay her general contractor upwards of $20,000 after the job was finished because of a dozen or so minor complaints, like he was slow. Told her she should pay and we could help her with her complaints. Else he will probably be successful getting a lien on her home. She didn't pay. He got a lien on her home. Even offered to help her stash the funds in escrow pending their dispute, and would prevent a lien in the meantime. Nope. My best guess is that she didn't have the money and was attempting a tantrum to get out of it. This was my 1L internship. Literally the first person to ever approach me in a legal capacity. Later that fall, she showed up to my school and was demanding my info from the front office, who handled it well and I never saw her. She blames me for losing her home. I told you to pay or you'd lose your home. You didn't pay and lost your home. Did this woman think she could just bully this first-year person into doing what she wanted? Did she even get a second opinion? This just feels like a desperate grab to try and get anyone to pay for her consequences, except for her. I mean, sometimes contractors are slow, but you just can't make a complaint saying that. Where is she living now? Story 4. I read a patent and told my bosses it was both invalid and infringed by no one. It had 10 means for elements in each patent that no one would practice, or that weren't supposed to be in the written description. Partners, my bosses, new to patent litigation, sued on the patent anyway using young, inexperienced, unseasoned attorneys in the firm. 3 years later, after billing the client millions of dollars, every defendant won by proving each claim either not infringed or invalid. Then my employer appealed and billed the client another buttload of money, with a young attorney in charge of the appeal that didn't understand the underlying issues on any level because he was a former teacher instead of patent attorney. It was such a bad patent, no one would settle at any point in the case. My bosses were blood-sucking trolls. I quit for these and similar parallel reasons. The firm finally imploded. Story 5. Not a lawyer. I was a jailer and used to pull double duty as a bailiff. A guy stole a pickup truck and was later captured and passed out behind the wheel parked on a sidewalk surrounded by a ludicrous amount of substances and guns. His legal defense? He elected to represent himself because he wasn't done being stupid. Double jeopardy. You can't charge me for theft, substances, and felon in possession of a weapon because I've already been convicted of all of those charges before. In short, during his jury trial, he admitted to doing it, but explained with a smug grin that since he had already done time for the same charges from another case before, that he could not be prosecuted for them ever again. This is not how double jeopardy works, folks. He's in prison for 20 years now. If he'd taken legal counsel, he could have easily cut a deal for 5. Story 6. A lady was sacked by a large company. They had caught her embezzling money to fund a gambling habit. They had clear evidence the embezzling had occurred, and she did not deny it. She sued the company for $300,000 for unfair dismissal. My sister's firm represented the company against this woman. The case was so easy, the firm gave it to my sister as her first ever solo attempt. My sister screwed it up badly. Not only did she lose, the court awarded the woman $500,000 instead of the $300,000 she asked for. In the end, it was a good career move. The partners all knew her name and dropped into her office, one by one, to offer their sympathy. So this one was actually won? And she got more than she asked for? I'm trying to figure out how this was a good career move. Did they not fire her after losing this so bad and costing them $500,000? What is the lady doing now? What is the sister doing now? Is she still practicing? Story 7. I had a client who won just shy of a 7-figure settlement in a personal injury case. She then dropped into my office to ask me to file a fee dispute against the attorney who represented her in the personal injury action. That attorney took a little over $260,000 on this case. If you're doing the math at home, this guy took a 27% fee on the type of case where 40% fees are common, did a freaking fantastic job because the woman got nearly $1 million, and then she turned around and tried to sue him to recover any of his fees. I rejected the case out of hand and then got an ethics complaint for discriminating against her. Sounds like she would have sued you for your fees if you had taken the case. Story 8. A woman wanted me to sue her previous lawyer for charging her a lot of money but producing almost no work to justify his fees. She gave me what she told me was the lawyer's total work product, a page printed off the internet for which she said she was charged thousands of dollars for legal advice. She had already brought a claim via my jurisdiction's disciplinary body for lawyers. She had lost and wanted to bring an appeal. The judgment kept referring to documents that I hadn't seen. I pushed her to give me everything, and she came in with multiple files full of immaculate legal work that totally justified the fees she was fighting. We told her to get lost, but she wasted a lot of my time before we realized she was full of feces. Story 9. My dad had a client who was on trial for being a felon in possession of firearms, possession of stolen property, burglary, and distribution of substances. Guy had multiple pictures of himself on Facebook holding guns, substances, and cash, and had videos of himself breaking into someone's house and stealing a gun, as well as selling sea substance on several occasions. Despite my dad basically telling the genius he was going to prison either way and to plead out for a reduced sentence, dude still pleaded not guilty. We still occasionally joke that the guy clearly wasn't competent to stand trial by virtue of being so dumb. I don't understand people's fascination for posting their crimes on Facebook. I don't get that either. Just why? People want the recognition for the crime, but they don't want the legal consequences. Do you really think Facebook is going to protect your data? They're the ones that probably gave up the videos to the lawyers in the first place. Story 10. Worked in family law in California for like 2 years before deciding I'd unalive myself if I didn't change career paths. In California, the obligation to pay spousal support, alimony, ends when the recipient begins cohabitation with a new romantic partner. A guy who was positively getting fricked in half in his monthly payments came to the office and said he was aware of the rule about cohabitation and wanted me to argue his point in court. You see, his ex was a narcissist. She was in love with, and had begun cohabitation with, herself. Her presence in her apartment should count the same as if there were a romantic partner there. He was bordering on begging me to take his money. I refused. Story 11. Not my client, But my dad and the hospital he worked at was sued by a gentleman after he saved his wife's life. Details. Patient is pregnant with 8th child and miscarries. The fetus is removed, but the patient starts bleeding uncontrollably. The only option available is a hysterectomy. It was either that or she died right there on the table. My dad gets called in to do the surgery, performs it successfully. Hooray! The patient's husband is quite devout and beyond ticked that his wife can't have any more kids. So he sued the hospital. No firm would represent him, and he ended up bringing proceedings himself. Went all the way to trial, and he lost hard. Story 12. I'm a paralegal. Local guy in his 20s decides to rob his dealer. He got the wrong apartment. When the college girl opened the door, he shot her in the face and fled. She laid there for hours just out of reach of her cell phone and listened to it ring while her mom called. She lived, and a neighbor found her. Now she's paralyzed from the neck down, and her face is very deformed. This is a small town. During the trial, the jury was shown just how strung out on substances he was, and how he even bragged to a few friends that he shot someone. That's pretty dang hard to defend. He's 40 years old. The girl that drove him to and from the apartment was also given jail time. That is very tragic. What kind of sentence did he get? I wonder if he got life. He's basically sentenced this woman to a life of being in a wheelchair and being disfigured. Did this guy think he had any chance of winning the defense? Did he have any remorse? Story 13. Not a lawyer, but I feel bad for YNW Melly's lawyer. Dude wrote 3 songs about unaliving someone, unalived 2 people in his vehicle, drove them to the hospital, and said it was a drive-by. The shell casings of the bullets were in his car. Cell phone GPS pings him at the unaliving scene. He said he'd unalive them in text messages, and the dude pleads not guilty. I imagine that if you take a job like that, you probably have to disconnect emotionally and just play the part, as if it were a speech and debate exercise. Then after your client, of course, loses, you go cash your paycheck. Story 14. We once had a client skip bail and run. I looked him up on Facebook, and he had posted a photo of the bond paperwork and a bunch of $20 bills. The post read something like, "Man, frick the law and my bondsman. Can't nobody tell me junk. Blah, blah, typical hood junk. We live in BFE, Texas. Dude is not a gangster." Anyways, he didn't realize that the only reason we bonded him was because we were going to represent him. Withdrew on the bond and the case. In the motion to withdraw, we quoted his Facebook post and attached a copy of it as Exhibit A when we filed it. Story 15. I haven't had anything too spectacular, but I've had a couple of clumsy civil fraud cases that I withdrew from. Both involved defendants who forged documents but didn't understand metadata. For instance, I can right-click this added PDF text to view its properties. It indicates that the text was added 6 weeks after the document was supposed to have been submitted in completed form. The other side will ask about this. What's our response? I think a lot of people think they can get away with forgery of this type because documents are electronic. I don't think they realize that there are some properties put into place to protect against this kind of thing. That's why a lot of government entities ask for PDFs. I hope this idiot lost their case. Story 16. Dad in his 60s hadn't been paying child support for decades, and he owed more than $60,000 for 2 kids who are adults now. He was basically living at a farm in the middle of nowhere so no one could find him. He worked for cash so the money could not be garnished from anywhere. He then came into an inheritance, which was deposited in his bank account and promptly confiscated by family maintenance. He wanted it back. Story 17. A friend of mine was in a case where a guy was accused for graffiti vandalism, among other things, and the conversation with the judge went like this. Judge: Sir, did you make this graffiti? Defendant: No, I didn't. Judge: But it has your signature at the end. Defendant: Yes, an artist has to sign his work. Case closed. Story 18. I represented a tree trimming company that went to the wrong address and cut down all the mature trees in that yard. The right address was 100 North XXXX Street, and the company went to 100 South XXXX Street and just went straight at it, hacking away. I still have no idea why the insurance company didn't just settle that one pre-suit. Legal advice is salivating. Yeah, that insurance company should have just settled. What did they think was going to be their defense? Why in the world did they think they would win? I hope they had to pay out more than just recovering for the loss of the trees. Just one word really cost them. Story 19. She lived on a large riverfront block. She had a jetty for a boat. Her large tree fell over in a storm and landed mostly in the water, making it difficult to moor her boat. She wanted to sue the government for not taking away her fallen tree. If it grows on your property, it's your tree. Simple as that. Story 20. My brother's a lawyer. His client took a backhoe, dug up a standalone ATM, and scooped it onto a flatbed truck, then, and only then, noticed a security camera nearby filming everything. He got some black spray paint out of his truck, went up 2 inches away, really nice view of his face, and sprayed the camera lens. He insisted on pleading not guilty. At that point, what do you as a lawyer do? Do you shut down and just play the part like that last person did? Do you try to reason with this person that maybe they need to put in a plea bargain? Did this guy eventually still plead not guilty? I have a feeling that he opted to represent himself and just lost big time. Story 21. A guy wanted to sue God because it was unfair to blame the rest of us for Adam's poor choice. I read about a guy who tried to sue the devil for making him commit crimes. The judge threw it out when the man couldn't prove the devil lived in the judge's jurisdiction. Story 22. This guy unalived his father, then during the trial, he sent unaliving threats to his mother. Ladies and gentlemen, take pity on my client. He's soon to be an orphan. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.